Hey y'all, Vinny again. Long time no talk. I've been busy lately, school primarily. But I have gotten the chance to tear apart my old Buick engine, my Chevrolet. I actually got myself a set of 1972 heads here. Cleaned them up, painted them, new valves, springs, rockers, and all that good stuff. Also spent the time. If you do have a Buick engine, one of the most important things you can do for yourself is to port the intake. Even if it's not perfect, is take the intake gasket and lay it over the whole face of the intake, and you get a Sharpie marker, you mark everything, you start grinding it down with like a Dremel and what's called a carbide bit. You start grinding away the metal so that these square holes line up with the intake gasket. That way you get real good airflow. Another problem with Buick heads is if you look, you see those two holes down in there in the head. Well, that's the stupid thing, they call it the intake manifold stove. Here's your exhaust valves here. When it opens up, some of the exhaust gas goes out the exhaust manifold, and some of it comes up to these two holes, and it blows hot air on your intake manifold, which obviously gets it hot, makes your mixture run rich, and kind of knocks down some horsepower and gas mileage. Some experts will say there's two routes of going about this: is plugging these holes up with a freeze plug, just sticking freeze plugs in there, 3/4 inch. Or filling the whole thing with molten aluminum, which is really hard and takes a machine shop and lots of expensive equipment. And the freeze plugs don't work as well because it will still leave that gap inside the ports for turbulence, and you won't quite get all the horsepower gains. I've discovered a cheap trick that's as effective as the aluminum, but as easy to do as the freeze plug. Is I took some 3/4 inch steel rod, cut some pieces about roughly 2.5 inches long. There's my notches there. So if you take a look, you take your finger, it's about a finger, a little less than a finger in length. And I crammed them down in there, cut one with a notch so they both kind of butt up against each other. And if you look down here inside the exhaust port, you may see it, a little dark in here, but you'll see that little red spot right there. That is the end of my steel rod. There's a shiny one there. See the silver in there. That's the steel rod coming through, plugging up that hole all the way. A freeze plug would leave a big gap in there, so you'd still have air turbulence. You know, the air wouldn't swirl around as good in here. But with that plug coming out through the end, it eliminates that turbulence, and doing this will give you a 10 horsepower gain over what it was before. And it's something you can easily do with a MIG welder, a cutoff wheel, and some 3/4 inch rod you can get at your hardware store. Like I said, you cut it about a finger's length. You just kind of eyeball it, maybe 2.5 inches long. Cram them in there, weld the back ends together so that they never come out, and you just solve that problem on a set of Buick heads. Eventually I'll make a video when this motor is all put together, and until we meet again, stay gold.